Wealth attraction research, war, economic emergence. This is inspired by exercisingyourmind.com. That's right, exercisingyourmind.com. You're listening to Wealth Attraction Research, War. This episode, Economic Emergence, inspired by exercisingyourmind.com, presented by Hakeem Alibokis Alexander on Wisdom Social Audio Inc. and Spreaker Social Podcasting, presented for World Reading Club in association with exercisingyourmind.com and UniquilibriuM. Yesterday, I read from both the Little Economics or Little Book of Economics and How Money Works, both collaborations with several different researchers and contributors. One was a pilot, then I did the first episode. You can find them here on Wisdom and also on Spreaker under World Reading Club. Today I'm continuing, starting first with the book How Money Works. And this section is called The Emergence of Modern Economics. And small geek fact, well, maybe I'll get to that later, but it has to do with cesium. And one of the other books I have, it opens up at the introduction, is called the cesium bomb, which has to do with cesium 137. And there's a cool connection with cesium 133 and how we measure the second. But I'll get into that later. Right now, this section of the book is called The Emergence of Modern Economics. Why does anybody want to know about that? Economics is such a boring subject, isn't it? Well, when we consider anything that people might consider magic, alchemy, shamanism, or anything like that, well, this is the secret door, the spell book, the reason why we have this widening gap between people who are called middle class and poor and the so-called rich and elite. There is a spell book. There is, and there do exist, various different spell books and spells scattered all over the place that, if placed the right way, can help people to pierce the veil. A, a little bit, maybe some people know this better than I do, about Harry Potter or other uh, fantasy and tales about magic and wizards and sorcerers and things like that. But you've probably seen that some sorcerer casts a spell and hurls it into the direction of their opponent, and the opponent will conjure a counter spell, right? Or maybe you've seen Doctor Strange in fantasy, right? Which science fiction, it crosses over into the whole Avengers narrative. But you see that a spell is cast against someone, and in order to fight it, they quickly conjure another spell to counteract it. So this is the kind uh, of a perspective you can take when looking at this. You can take the perspective that there is a spell, for example. People want to call them conspiracy theories, and some call them all kinds of different things. But all of our existence is magic, and all you have to do is know the right spells. And you can't be, the biggest spell is is occlusion or sins of omission. It's fantastic how simple the magic can be by simply not sharing things with certain people. You can actually cast a spell. You can call it whatever you want, ignorance. But once you know the key to unlock, then you can enter into. However, that's a little bit much. I have just less than an hour now to continue here. So I'm going to get into these two things. There's a series. It's going to be nonstop. I did two of them yesterday. They're on Spreaker and here on Wisdom, all under Wealth Attraction Research. And it actually doesn't matter what order you hear them in because they go through a lot. Mathematics, physics, economics, and yeah, I know those things might seem boring, but there's a point and there's a reason. And it all shall soon be restored. All right, this is the how money works. All right, how money works, the facts. All right, this is section in that book is called called Emergence of Modern Economics. All right, so by the 18th century, people began to study the economy more closely as thinkers tried to understand how the trade and investment decisions of individuals could have an effect on prices and wages throughout a country. It- That's how the trade and investment decisions of individuals could have an effect on prices and wages throughout a country. These are, these are very key things. Uh, individuals, all right, how it works. With the massive expansion of trade that accompanied the discovery of the Americas and the growth of nation states in Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries, individuals began to think in more detail about the idea of economics. They variously suggested that controlling the level of imports, mercantilism, trading only in the goods a country made best, comparative advantage, or choosing not to intervene in the markets, laissez-faire, might improve their people's economic well-being. Once again, they variously suggested that controlling the level of imports, trading only in the goods a country made best, or choosing not to intervene in the markets might improve their people's economic well-being. In the 18th century, economist Adam Smith proposed that government intervention controlling wages and prices was unnecessary because the self-interested decisions of individuals who all want to be better off cumulatively ensure the prosperity of their society as a whole. In addition, he believed that in a freely competitive market, the impetus to make profit ensures that goods are valued at a fair price. Adam Smith's invisible hand. In his book, The Wealth of Nations, 1776, the Scottish economist Adam Smith suggested that the sum of the decisions made by individuals, each of whom, wanting to be better off, results in a country becoming more prosperous without those individuals ever having consciously desired that end. Hmm? According to Adam Smith, where there is demand for goods, sellers will enter the market. In the pursuit of profit, they will increase the production of these goods, supporting industry. Furthermore, in a competitive market, a seller's self-interest limits the price rises they can demand in that if they charge too much, buyers will stop purchasing their goods or lose sales to competitors willing to charge less. This can have a deflationary effect on prices and ensures that the economy remains in balance. Smith referred to this market mechanism, which turns individual self-interest into wider economic prosperity, as an invisible hand guiding the economy. So this is people not consciously deciding to prosper the society as a whole, but Mr. Adam Smith says that that people's self-interest in having a better life is in itself, because of the actions that people take, act as an invisible hand that guides the economy into wider economic prosperity. Hmm. Well, let's look, for example. You got Stellar A here charging $4. Seller A is charging too much for his or her goods, but still makes sales because he or she is the only seller and enjoys an effective monopoly. And the buyers reduce their purchases as prices are prohibitively high. Does it sound familiar to anybody? Then enter Seller B. No, Seller B sees an opportunity to enter the market and sets up her own stall, selling at a lower price in order to undercut A. As Seller B's price is lower, buyers begin to buy from her instead of Seller A. We all know about that. It happens all the time. Protectionism and mercantilism. Adam Smith's encouragement of free trade and competition was at odds with the dominant economic theories of his time. Most thinkers supported some form of protectionism, an economic policy in which a government imposes high trade tariff in order to protect its industry from competition. In Europe at the time, this took the form of mercantilism, which held that to be strong, a country must increase its exports and do everything possible to decrease its imports, as exports brought money into a country while imports enriched foreign merchants. This theory led to strict governmental trade controls. The Navigation Acts forbade trade between Britain and its colonies in anything other than British ships. Mercantilism began to go out of fashion in the late 18th century under the pressure of new ideas about economic specialization put forward by Adam Smith and David Ricardo. But doesn't it sound familiar, though? Right? First of all, um, I don't know if y'all know this, but oil and a lot of things were only allowed to be traded and bought and sold through with using the American dollar. And this is why we have this BRICS meeting coming up here in August 22nd, where some speculate that these countries, including Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are going to decide to issue a new currency that is backed by gold. And because people trust what they call precious metals more than they do the word of governments these days, where we've been taken off the gold standard. You know, what about those good old greenbacks that that Abraham Lincoln was supposedly assassinated for, wanting to come away from the central bank, right? What about the silver certificates that good old Kennedy wanted to issue? Well, it even goes way back before that, but Kennedy supposedly was killed because of that, wanting to take away from the central bank. Um, on and on. People get killed for the supposedly for wanting to come away from these central banks. What about now we have what happens after seller B? She has a price of $2, right? And seller B's price is lower, so the buyers begin to buy from her instead of seller A, who was at $4, right? But then seller A drops his price slightly in order to regain customers and compete with seller B. But then seller B sees she can raise her price slightly and sell her goods, and her goods will still be in demand. So what happens is the goods have found a price at which buyers are happy to continue to purchase. The invisible hand has worked, and the market is now in equilibrium. You know what's interesting about that? Um, I lived in China, and pretty much everywhere you went, the prices were exactly the same for everything. It didn't matter what city or province you were in, and city you were in, and what province that city was in. The prices were the same for everything, for the most part. There were mom and pop shops and places that had like secondhand clothes and things like that that you could buy from, but where they could haggle and you can negotiate the prices. But one of the place that I shopped at all the time for all of my clothes, for the most part, was a place called Decathlon. And everywhere in Decathlon, no matter what, if I was in Chengdu, it doesn't matter if I was in Hangzhou, it doesn't matter if I was in Xiamen, it doesn't matter Shanghai, wherever there's a Decathlon, the prices for the items were exactly the same everywhere. So they automatically did that, which is an issue that's proposed where the there's a pre-planned economy, which is in um, socialism, communism, as opposed to the self-interests of people in capitalism leading to this balance eventually, that invisible hand. But let's continue. So Adam Smith says by pursuing his own interest, he frequently promotes that of the society more effectually than when he really intends to promote it. That's interesting, right? People can pretend to want to promote. This is, oh man, this says a lot. You gotta hear that again. By pursuing his own interests, he frequently promotes that of the society, meaning he frequently promotes the interests of the society more effectively than when he really intends to promote it. Pursuing your own self-interest in a free market frequently promotes the interest of society more effectually than if you were to intend to promote it. The magic continues. Here's what you need to know. Market equilibrium is when the amount of certain goods demanded by buyers matches the amount supplied by sellers, the point at which all parties are satisfied with the goods price. Laissez-faire. That's an economic theory that holds that the market will produce the best solutions in the absence of government interference. Whoa. An economic laissez-faire, an economic theory that holds that the market will produce the best solutions in the absence of government interference. Trade, prices, and wages do not need to be regulated as the market itself will correct imbalances in them. That's market equilibrium. And comparative advantage. The idea that countries should specialize in those goods they can produce at the lowest cost. By avoiding producing goods in which they do not have a comparative advantage, countries will become more efficient and therefore better off. There's a lot to say here about the whole offshore manufacturing and things like that. There's a lot of things that we indeed here are better at producing in the United States of America. I say we, but due to greed and other issues, a lot of that doesn't happen, and it causes issues in the economy. Let's see. Wow, it's interesting. Only a quarter after two. That's good. I got 45 minutes. Before I go into the next section here of economic theories and money, I'm going to switch over to the little book of economics once again and go take us back a little bit. So there's a lot to unpack, and this takes us a little back into history once again, and it's this section is called "You Don't Need to Barter." when you have coins. Oh, I forgot. This is what I forgot to do because I have my own little sound effects going on here. Um, and you don't need to barter when you have coins. So that there was an interesting little review here about yesterday's reading and commentary that the step from bartering to money, right, were promissory notes and coins, which have somewhat of a similar intermediary purpose, which, a promissory note or an IOU, right, have that intermediary purpose of um, being uh, a means of exchange so that, they have a fixed value, which, if you have a cow and somebody has wheat and you wanted to um, get get that wheat to some right away, and you had a cow to trade, but the cow was maybe only a calf, you trade the wheat, give the person the wheat, and that person would give you an IOU for a cow. And then when the winter came and the cow was fully grown, then what you can do is bring them back that IOU, and they'll give you a now full-grown cow that has been fattened up and ready to trade. Whereas before, they could both show up. Okay, I got my real life sound effects now. All right. Dun, 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 dun. All right, here we go. You don't need to barter when you have coins. The function of money. Okay. In context, let's focus. Is banking and finance. Key event, Kubla Khan. Kubla Khan adopts what? What did Kubla Khan do? Kubla Khan adopts fiat money in the Mongol Empire during the 13th century. Before that, in 3000 BCE in Mesopotamia, the shekel is used as a unit of currency. A unit of barley of a certain weight equals a certain value of gold or silver. 700 BCE, the oldest known coins are made on the Greek island of Aegina. After that, in the 13th century, Marco Polo brings promissory notes from China to Europe, where they are used by Italian banksters. And 1696, the Bank of Scotland is the first commercial operation to issue banknotes. In 1971, President Nixon cancels the convertibility of the US dollar to gold. Oh man, Nixon, what did you do? In many parts of the world, people are increasingly moving toward a cashless society in which goods are bought with credit cards, electronic transfers, and smartphone chips. But dispensing with cash does not mean that money is not used. Money remains at the heart of all our transactions. The disturbing effects of money are well known. The disturbing effects of money are well known, inciting everything from miserliness to crime and warfare. Money has been used as a tribute, a sign of respect in religious rites and for ornamentation. Blood money, right? Blood money is paid. Oh, hold on. Let me read that correctly. Money has been used as a tribute, sign of respect in religious rites and for ornamentation. Blood money is paid as recompense for murder. Brides are bought with bride money or given away with dowries to enrich their husbands. Money lends status and power to individuals, families, and nations. A barter economy. Without money, people could only barter. Many of us barter to a small extent when we return favors. A man might offer to mend his neighbor's broken door in return for a few hours of babysitting, for instance. Yet it is hard to imagine these personal exchanges working on a larger scale. What would happen if you wanted a loaf of bread and all you had to trade was your new car, right? Barter depends on the double coincidence of wants, where not only does the other person happen to have what I want, but I also have what he wants. Ooh, the Tiwa tribal people, this is an aside, the Tiwa tribal people of Assam, India, exchange goods through barter during Jonbil Mela, an age-old festival to preserve harmony and brotherhood between tribes. I'm looking at a picture of that. All right, so money solves all of these problems, the problems of the barter economy, right? Where, you know, where we have the barter depends on double coincidence of wants, where somebody happens to have what I want and I have what they want, right? But money solves all these problems. There is no need to find someone who wants what you have to trade. You simply pay for your goods with money. The seller can then take the money and buy from someone else. Money is transferable and deferrable. The seller can hold on to it and buy when the time is right. Many argue that complex civilizations could never have arisen without the flexibility of exchange that money allows. Money also gives a yardstick for deciding the value of things. If all goods have a monetary value, we can know and compare every cost. So, this important note, many argue that complex civilizations could never have arisen without the flexibility of exchange that money allows. Seems to make sense, doesn't it? What do you think? All right, different kinds of money. There are two kinds of money, commodity and fiat. This is very important, folks. Commodity money has intrinsic value besides its specified worth. For example, when gold coins are used as currency. Fiat money, first used in China in the 10th century, is money that is simply a token of exchange with no value other than that assigned to it by the government. A paper dollar bill is fiat money. Many paper currencies were initially promises to pay against gold held in reserve. In theory, dollars issued by the U.S. Federal Reserve could be exchanged for their gold value. But since 1971, the value of a dollar has no longer been convertible to gold and is set entirely by the U.S. Treasury without reference to its gold reserves. Again, since 1971, the value of a dollar has no longer been convertible to gold and the value is set entirely by the U.S. Treasury without reference to its gold reserves. Such fiat currencies rely on people's confidence in a country's economic stability, which is not always assured. All right, looking at a little flow here. Without barter, a person can, or with barter, a person can only exchange with someone who wants what he or she has to offer. But you don't need to barter if you have coins. With money, an individual can buy from anyone who is willing to sell. With money, a seller can sell to anyone who wants what the seller has. Money can be held until the time is right to buy. And money helps us measure the value of things, right? That's one important part there is money can be held until the time is right to buy. Because remember some of the bartering situations where you show up with a cow and someone shows up with a load of wheat, right? Or maybe they come to trade those things, but the person's cow is not full grown and ready yet. All right, shelling out, shelling out. Wampum were strings of white and black shell beads treasured by the indigenous North Americans of the eastern woodland tribes. Before the European settlers arrived in the 15th century, wampum was used mainly for ceremonial purposes. People might exchange wampum to record an agreement or to pay tribute. Its value came from the immense skill involved in making it and in its ceremonial associations. When Europeans arrived, their tools revolutionized wampum making, and Dutch colonizers mass produced the beads by the million. Dutch. My great great grandmother on my mom's side is Dutch. The name is von Heinigen. I wonder how that happened. Soon, they were using wampum to trade and buy things from the native peoples, who had no interest in coins but valued wampum. Wampum soon became a currency with an accepted exchange rate. In New York, 8 white or 4 black wampum equaled 1 stuiver. Was it stuiver? Stiver? I'm going to call it a stiver. Looks like stuiver. Stuiver? Let's say stuiver. That's a nice balance between those. In New York, that's where I was born, 8 white or 4 black wampums, apparently the black ones are worth more, equaled 1 stuiver, a Dutch coin of the time. The use and value of wampum diminished in the 1670s. And I'm looking at a Shawnee shoulder bag is decorated with wampum beads, which developed into a currency for some North American tribes. Interesting. I can't wait to get to this next section. It's called Make Money from Money. Interesting. But we're going to switch back and forth here. Listening to wealth attraction research. War. All wars are bankers' wars, by the way. Just a little side note there. All wars are bankers' wars. Gosh, I gotta get the book Babylon's Banksters. I keep putting off ordering it. Then, then it means I have to go all the way back to Virginia Beach to my house to get it, which I don't really feel like doing it. But I guess suppose I have to go back there at some point in time. All right. Ooh, but here, back to how money works. We have economic theories and money. It is 1400 hours and 27 minutes here on the East Coast of the United States in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, to be exact. And I will be shutting this down in 20 minutes or so because I have a meeting, something called a heat map session. As being an Uber crew member, having been elected, I have agreed to this heat map session, which I have another one apparently on August 14th now as well on Monday. I got a few things to do today with them. One, which is a Zoom meeting for office hours as the Uber crew member, and then, or before that, the heat map session, which I have no idea what it is, but I'm excited to figure it out. All right, let's see. All right, the magic, the alchemy, the sorcery, the wizardry of money being revealed. History is wonderful. I love books like this. This is how I learned a lot about physics and other things in science, with these really concise explanations, these really cool descriptions of things, and having them pointed out. There was, I think his name was Arno Penzias, who was one of the physicists who discovered the cosmic background radiation. He had made a commentary about one of the books called The Cartoon Guide to Physics by Larry Gonick, and I forget who the physicist who co-wrote it with him. But he says that it puts most college textbooks to shame. And I've actually found that a lot about a lot of books that you would like that you can learn certain things from, especially, I mean, I gotta tell you, Barnes and Nobles and a bunch of these other um, independent bookshops around here have some marvelous finds. If only more people would get into some of these books to learn things that they feel like they can't know, you'd find some gems. All right, this next section in how money works is economic theories and money. Money, 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 money. I wanna be rich. Oh, I wanna be rich. I've got the Midas touch. Everything I touch turns to gold. By the way, I know Vincent Calloway. I used to work with him. He was Midnight Star and the Callaways, where those second two songs that I chimed out a little bit came from. He's got black belts in a bunch of different martial arts, and we worked together in Meridian's Bodies in Motion in California. Midas Touch and I Want to Be Rich. Anyway, economic theories and money. Since the birth of modern economic thought, economists have tried to work out how the quantity of money in an economy affects prices and the behavior of consumers and businesses. So this is the important part. They wanted to figure out how the quantity of money, like how much money in an economy, affects prices and the behavior of consumers and businesses. Keynes' General Theory of Money. In his 1935 book General Theory, John Maynard Keynes argued that government spending and taxation levels affect prices more than the quantity of money in the economy. So government spending and taxation levels affect prices more than the quantity of money in an economy. He proposed that in times of recession, a government should increase spending to encourage employment and reduce taxes to stimulate the economy. By the way, I'm going to mention this over and over again. Hello, Doobie. Thanks for joining. And truly, Julie, Zen Master, Terry, PZ Tire, Chuck, Amos Waterbury, Cecilia Grace, Marcy Ann, Dara with the dashes, and Life Love Sessions. Um, but people, I'm going to keep talking about this because it seems so difficult for people to want to tackle. But 99.5% of the tax code is written for you to legally avoid paying taxes. 99.5% of it is written. If you would only ask your tax advisor, accountant, or whoever, or even go to H&R Block and pester them about it. Maybe go pick up a book uh, and carry it around you. No, give it to them, but flaunt it in front of their face for 25 bucks. Called Tax-Free Wealth: How to Build Massive Wealth by Permanently Lowering Your Taxes by Tom Wheelwright, CPA, who's one of the Rich Dad advisors from Robert Kiyosaki. And go in there and highlight and read sections to them and ask questions when you're doing your taxes, because you can, even as a person who's employed, an employee quadrant, right? The E quadrant, as they call it, in the cash flow quadrant from Robert Kiyosaki. Even if your only income is as an employee, you can find out different things in education and other things for self-development, personal development, self-improvement that can be written off, meaning what's written off mean? Deducted. What does deducted mean? Subtracted from your taxable income. That means if you make $100 and you spend, that would usually be taxed on that $100, which you already are, right? You get taxed on it before you get your paycheck. But that means that if you spend $5 on a book or something like that, that's necessary and normal for like your work, for example, to become a better employee, you can write that $5 off, meaning you you can get that back or some portion of that back because it reduces the amount of taxable income. I mean, yeah, sometimes it seems like a lot of work, but the more of those things that you build up and the more you set your life up in a certain way, it becomes favorable. All right, I got to continue with this because I got to have this meeting in about 20 minutes. Um, so again, uh, that that government spending and taxation levels affect the prices more than the quantity of money in the economy. This is a key here, a little bit of an alchemical key here. Because one of the issues that we talk about inflation is that the printing of money by the Federal Reserve, by the way, founded in 1913, the same year that the 16th Amendment was ratified about taxation, coincidentally enough, um, is that if we want to stimulate the economy, right? Maynard Keynes says, in times of recession, which is that what's happening, the government should increase spending to encourage employment and reduce taxes to stimulate the economy. So let's look at is the government doing anything to increase their spending? And are they reducing taxes? Is that happening? If not, that's a problem. Increase government spending and reduce taxes. So government, when output is shrinking and unemployment rising, a government must decide how to react. As demand falls, firms reduce production, which raises unemployment and lowers demand, right? So government output spending is shrinking, demands fall, firms reduce production, which raises unemployment and lowers demand. Stimulating demand would be the government increasing its spending, for example, on infrastructure. This reduces unemployment, right? So building houses, schools, and hospitals, which a comment there. This is one of the reasons why people who start certain businesses and invest in certain things get these major tax deductions because they do the things that the government needs to get done. So you as a person can figure out a way, if you so wanted to, not everybody wants the same thing, right? Like finding a way to build or improve housing, schools, hospitals, because the government needs partners to help them to provide housing, provide jobs, and energy, right? Besides agriculture, food, and healthcare, of course. Um, welfare, healthcare, education, and policing, defense, and transportation infrastructure, which I'm part of, right? But stimulating demand, the government would increase the spending for those things, or you can help find ways to improve those things. But it's not so easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. This is why not everybody does it, and not everybody wants to either. Right? So, hello, Chuck and Penny Frampton. I like that name. Fisher's quantity theory of money. The most common version of this theory was articulated by Irving Fisher, right? And we're talking about Keynes' general theory of money, where he says that that if we're gonna stimulate demand, right, and improve the economy in a time of recession, the government should increase spending to encourage employment and reduce taxes, right, to stimulate the economy. That's Keynes' general theory of money. Fisher's quantity theory of money is the most common version of this theory, which was articulated by Irving Fisher, who argued that there is a direct link between the amount of money in the economy and price level, with more money in circulation increasing prices, right? That's inflation. That's the other theory of, of inflation, right? Low money supply equals demand for money rises, but a high demand increases value and money buys more goods. So again, if there's low money supply, the demand for it, and people want it, there's not enough going around, right? That's supply and demand, right? High demand increases the value of money, and the money itself buys more goods. But if there's a lot of money, right, coming out of the pipeline, boop, 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 there's so much money in the account, the demand for money reduces. People don't want it so much because there's so much of it. But the low demand decreases value and the money buys fewer goods. It's like a t-shirt might be $10 when there's low money supply, right? But when there's a high supply of money, the t-shirt might be 15 bucks, right? Let's look at Marx's labor theory of value. The German economist Karl Marx argued that the real price or economic value of goods should be determined not by the demand for those goods, but by the value of the labor that went into producing them. I don't think I totally disagree with that because it goes back to those when we were looking at the other book about the wampum, right? And the wampum um, were the wampum here was actually had the skill. The value came from the immense skill involved in making it and its ceremonial association. So let's see what Marx says. The German economist Karl Marx argued that the real price or economic value of goods should be determined not by the demand for those goods, but by the value of the labor that went into producing it. So one pair of shoes equals 2 hours of labor at $10 an hour equals $20, right? One dress, 10 hours of labor at $10 an hour equals $100. Well, that makes sense. I can't argue with that. Just because I'm not a freaking communist, say that not so gently, purposely, um, doesn't mean that I can't appreciate their different. Um, when something makes sense, it makes sense, right? I don't like it's because I've been brainwashed, just like communism from movies like Rocky and all kinds of other stuff like that. I will break you. Doesn't mean that they don't have there's not any good ideas. I don't like Karl Marx either. I've got his book, The Communist Manifesto. I'm not a big fan, but I read it anyway. How it works. Scholars in the early 16th century were the first to note that the abundance of silver coming into Spain from the New World led to increased prices. Yeah, what was it? They were bringing in like some crazy amount of tons into the into Spain. It was like 350 tons. It was called the Potosi inflation, where the Spanish discovered silver in Potosi, Bolivia, and caused a century of inflation by shipping 350 tons of the metal back to Europe annually. Right, so um, the scholars in the early 16th century were the first to note that the abundance of silver coming into Spain from the New World led to increased prices. Economists of the 18th century classical school believed that the market would correct for such imbalances, reaching an equilibrium price by itself. By the early 20th century, some economists believed that intervention by the government was necessary to maintain a balanced economy, arguing that government spending could boost employment by increasing overall demand. Hmm. Well, let's see how that happens. We're stimulating demand, right? Going from the chart. Uh, what happens? Well, the government increases the spending, for example, on infrastructure, and this reduces unemployment, right? So you got building houses, schools, hospitals, transportation infrastructure, defense, welfare, healthcare, education, and policing. And when production increases, so with more people in employment, consumer spending rises. Increased demand leads to increased production, right? Because people have more money. Because of course, if you have a fucking job, you're going to spend more money, right? Because you have it to spend it. You probably stuff that you wanted, where if you didn't have a job before, then you weren't going to buy it. You don't have the money, right? So, but then businesses spend more. With demand rising, firms invest more. Company, right? They invest more, opening more factories and providing more employment naturally, right? So then what happens there? The companies, right? Wages increase, goods, investment, right? They give people more money, they make more goods, they invest in more business, and those become multipliers. That more money in the economy. But the economy is in imbalance in this case, with levels of investment and production high and employment and wages rising. The stimulation of extra government spending is no longer needed. It balances itself out. So let's look at Hayek's business cycle. Austrian economist Friedrich Hayek noted a cycle in the economy in which interest rates fall during a recession. This leads to an overexpansion of credit, necessitating a rise in interest rates to counter excess demand. Yeah, we have really low interest rates right now, by the way. That's why some people like Robert Kiyosaki say savers are losers because the money you put inside the bank, in some places there's um, negative interest where you get actually charged to save your money. You have to pay for it. So now we have Hayek's business cycle. It says that we need a rise in interest rates to counter excess demand. So in a recession, the interest rates cut to, let's say, 0.25%, and then in an expansion, the interest rates raise to 1%. There's correction, recession. So it goes up and down, right? Recession, recovery, expansion, correction, recession. Oh boy. Fried, Friedman's monetarism. Lots of people know about this guy. Milton Friedman argued that governments could raise or lower interest rates to affect the money supply. Cuts would stimulate consumer spending, right? So cuts would stimulate consumer spending. Rises would restrict consumer spending and reduce the amount of money in the supply. So an employee paid $100 spends $100. The supermarket pays the supplier $100. The supplier pays the employees $100. Ooh, that's that's split amongst them, right? High interest. Employee paid $100, right? So this is the low interest cycle. The employee is paid the employee, right? You get paid $100. You spend $100. To the supermarket, right? The supermarket pays the supplier $100, and the supplier pays the employee $100. That's in a low interest rate. But now, in high interest rate, the employee is paid 100, but saves 50 and spends 50. The supermarket pays the supplier 50, and the supplier pays employees 50. The supplier has less money to pay the employee. So that's why high interest rates cuts consumer spending. All right, I only got 5 minutes here. So, oh, that's actually a good break there. Profit making and financial institutions is the next thing here, which I'll come back probably after my heat map session and what have you. And then there's make money from money. Yeah, that's a longer section. Make money from money, financial services. That should be an interesting one coming up there. But now, got to get ready for this heat map session at 3 o'clock, followed by office hours. Oh boy, this is going to be my first one. This is coming up here, so it should be interesting. All right, where I'm at. Yeah, well, you've been listening to Wealth Attraction Research War. This was Economic Emergence, presented by Hakeem Ali Bookus, Alexander here on Wisdom Social Audio Inc. and Spreaker Social Podcasting, presented for World Reading Club in association with exercisingyourmind.com and UniquilibriuM. I'll be coming back soon for more wealth attraction research, the wizardry, sorcery, alchemy, and magic of money.